Hello.
So I am Amy Kay from the library, joining you from my home kitchen. Amy H is the person who has started this Food Science for the Win program series. So I'm going to let her do the majority of this introduction.
Awesome. So welcome back to my kitchen. As I don't think actually our participants have been at a previous Food Science for the Win. So this series started when we realized how much time we were spending at home and having to feed ourselves, and also looking at the kitchen as a really great place to experiment. So we've been focusing on kind of staples or basics, wanting to make sure that people are able to get the ingredients and have the basic equipment available too to participate. We started with scrambled eggs. We've done salad dressings, we've done simple soups, we've done grilling and roasting vegetables. All of these are available on our events channel if you wanted to go back and see how kind of things, concepts kind of progressed along the way. And today's idea was actually proposed by Mimosa, our adult programming coordinator, because Amy Kay is known for her baking and jam making, and I'm here to learn. So we'll be doing a pretty straightforward jam using cranberries, which are in season right now. So thinking about access to ingredients, we wanted to make sure it was more accessible. I won't be doing the jarring process. So I just have some jars I found. Actually, I took this from the library, Amy. And I found this one above my stove in a cabinet. And we have some resources for you too on our resource guide that'll tell you how to make sure you store your jam safely so it doesn't go bad and upset your tummy later. But what we'll do is walk you through this spiced cranberry jam. We have the recipe for you as well. And we really hope that you try it later. Let us know how it goes. You can leave comments or reach out to us at the library. And we're just trying to learn from each other. So we've also gotten some participant suggestions for future events. One is roasting a chicken. So that's coming up in April, I think. Mimosa will clarify in the chat, I think. We've pulled in some other people from our department too who've been experimenting in their kitchen, and it's just kind of a fun series that results in something you can eat.
Yes. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to kind of walk Amy through the introduction or the instructions for getting started, because the thing about making jams at home needs, I like to do small batch jams. So not making a ton, like I don't have a massive canning pot on my stove. So this recipe makes between like 2 and 3 cups. And a lot of jam is like sitting and bubbling on the stove. So let's get it started, and then we can talk about the science and processes while it is on the stove. So Amy is starting with the recipe that we have on the website is 16 ounces or 1 pound of cranberries. Amy's doing 12 ounces because of course they come in 12-ounce bags. So she's just adjusted the math a little bit. So Amy is going to put into a heavy-bodied saucepan her 12 ounces of cranberries and a little less than a 1/4 cup of water. A 1/4 cup will probably be fine because it'll boil off. Okay. So now Amy's going to put that on a burner about medium heat, cover it. And the only real reason we're covering it at this point is because it'll come to a boil faster. It doesn't particularly do anything to like the chemistry of making the jam, just gets things moving a little bit faster. So a little bit of background on jam making. So when I say we're doing small batch, we're also doing natural, some folks will say it's artisanal jam, where we're using the natural pectin levels that are present in the fruit or whatever it is that we are going to create our jam or jelly or preserves from. So I'm referring to this book called Artisanal Preserves, Small Batch Jams, Jellies, Marmalades, and More, that is actually by a local author. And it is a known thing right now that we don't have this in our catalog, but I'm connecting with our collection development librarians to make sure we can get this added. But Madeline Bullwinkle is the author. She's local. She's taught a lot of classes back when you could have in-person cooking classes. And Amy and I actually took a class that she did a few years back. Talking about pectin. Pectin is a carbohydrate that occurs naturally in a lot of types of fruit. It's usually at its highest levels when the fruit is unripe. And then as the fruit ripens, the pectin levels will often decrease. But different types of fruit will pectin at different levels, and cranberries is one of those that has high pectin content pretty much throughout. And the reason pectin is so important is because that is the carbohydrate that is going to, as you evaporate water and cook the water out of your mixture, it is going to allow the strands of pectin to kind of adhere to one another, and that's what creates that gel. So if you have been looking at the canning supplies area of your local grocery store recently, you may have noticed, first of all, that it is very picked over, but I've started to see more and more where they have flats of jars. Those flats typically come with all of the supplies that you need for those jars. And somewhere in that area, there's also going to be something like Sure Gel or other sorts of ready to add pectin to go into your jam. So if you're trying to create jam or preserves in something that doesn't have a very high pectin level and you want to make sure it gets pretty well set and firm, that can be really useful. So like I said, we're doing cranberries today. Amy pointed out because they're readily available right now. You can just walk into your grocery store or place an online order, and cranberries are easy to get. Other things that are really high in pectin levels are apples. So if you make like apple pie filling or apple compote, I made some apple compote for a friend who got married for their cake a couple weeks ago, and it solidified in a good way. Blueberries, blackberries, and things like citrus. So you think preserved citrus and marmalades, that's they've got a lot of pectin specifically in the peels. So you might be kind of connecting the dots. High pectin cranberries, apples, those tend to be things that are a little bit more on the sour end of the spectrum than the sweet. As things get riper, the pectin level decreases. The peels of citrus, which tend to be quite bitter, have higher pectin. So there's the interplay between more pectin, less natural sugar in the fruit, which is why when we're making jam, we're going to add sugar. My favorite thing to make jam with is plums, which is a low pectin thing. So it ends up being a little bit more runny, but it's very good on pancakes. All right. So Amy, how are you doing in terms of, has it come to a boil?
I'm hearing noises.
Cool.
So yes, it's boiling.
So go ahead then, and I'm going to have you create what's called a bouquet garni, which
should I leave the lid on? You
can turn it off or take it off. That's fine.
Okay.
But no need for that right now.
Got it.
So you're going to put your aromatic spices in there. So it's going to include a 4-inch stick of cinnamon. I believe I gave you 2 cloves, a slice of ginger.
I gotta slice the ginger, but here's the rest of it. Can't really see. Let me put it on here. Okay.
2 cloves, a little bit of nutmeg, which you can either use ground, or in this case, I had some whole nutmeg and I cut off about 1/8 of a teaspoon worth, and a 1/4 teaspoon of fennel seed. So that's going to be the spice in our spiced cranberry jam. And so,
is this good?
Yep, perfect for the ginger. If you like things quite gingery, you can add more. You can leave out any of this that you don't particularly want. But there's something nice about the spice balancing out with the natural bitterness or sourness of the cranberries and the sugar that we're adding. So Amy put all of those in cheesecloth, because to create that bouquet garni, we're going to wrap them in cheesecloth and tie it shut with kitchen twine. And essentially what that is, that's our little bouquet of things that are going to fragrance and infuse with our jam. We're not going to leave it in when we jar it or eat it. It's just to kind of infuse in there. So yeah. Amy's doing a much better job of making it look pretty than I typically do.
I don't know about that. I'm having a little hard time. Okay, there we go.
Cool.
Double knot it, you think? Or
Sure. I always end up tying it too tight and then something rips the cheesecloth. So,
all right, I think we're good.
So go ahead and stick that in your pan. And we're going to keep the mixture bubbling, boiling for about 10 minutes. So it's been about 2.5 minutes since you took the lid off of the pot. So we'll give it like another 7 and just stirring a little bit. Now, one of the fun sensory things about making cranberry jam in particular is that as they heat up, they'll start to pop. Which is a fun noise. They do not jump out of the pot, but if it does start to kind of spit, you can put the lid back on most of the way. You don't want to completely cover it anymore. Because at this point, if you put the lid on, it's going to capture the water that's evaporating and keep it in the system. And we want to start to get rid of some of the water.
Yeah, I can see that some of the cranberries are like splitting. So that's like the popping stuff, I think, that's happening. For sure. Yeah. Do I need to stir it?
You can stir it periodically. Stirring it too much is going to bring the temperature down a lot. But making sure it gets mixed in, the bouquet garni gets like covered with stuff. That's great. Scraping down the sides too.
I have some. It's happening. It's cooking.
It is. So, question for you, Amy. When you started, and I just had you put in a 1/4 cup of water, did you feel like there's no way this is enough?
I did, actually. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the thing that, like, even though I've been making jams for a couple of years now, like, that was a big thing that, like, it just always strikes me that, like, how is this enough water? But almost immediately as the heat rises, especially with the lid covered, and the fruit starts to break down, you get the fruit juice added in, and it's great. Side note, I think someone is sweeping the stairs that are right by my kitchen door. So if there's a weird sound, sorry. We let it the flavors meld together with the bouquet garni in there, let the fruit break down on its own a little bit. And then our next step in a few minutes is going to be adding in sugar. So in the recipe for 16 ounces of cranberries, it's 2 cups of sugar. Since Amy is doing 12 ounces of cranberries, she's doing 1.5 cups of sugar. And when we get to that point, the process is to add it in 1/2 cup at a time, and stirring and letting it come back to a boil before you add in more. And again, that just gives plenty of time for not only for the liquid to separate the sugar into fructose and glucose, but also allow for the liquid in the fruit that is kind of surrounding the pectin molecules to break down and boil off and let the pectin kind of come out to play and grab onto things. So yeah, this is also the point at which, like, if you were doing something a jam that was a little bit more naturally sweet, cranberries tend to be pretty sour. Like when I do plum or apricot, I'll add in a squeeze of lemon or something acidic at this point, because again, that's going to help with the chemical reaction to allow the pectin to come out. So yeah. So while we wait a minute or two for before Amy starts putting the sugar, do you want to talk safety a little bit?
Oh, about jarring?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have included a resource on like actual jarring in the resource guide with this program. But I don't trust myself to actually sanitize these jars very well. So aside from making sure they're clean, so either washing them by hand in hot soapy water, or like in this case, these have both been in the dishwasher, you still need to boil and make sure that your jars are hot when it comes to the canning process, because if you put in hot jam into a room temperature glass jar, the glass is going to be like, and explode. but also the heat is going to prevent bacteria from developing as well. And so every piece of the jar needs to be sanitized. And like these are old, so that's another reason why I wouldn't want to necessarily use these for the true jarring or canning process. But I also have the pop lid, which is really important. So you need that. And then as they seal, it will actually go down and you'll hear it, which is really cool. So I believe there's a video even that I sent, or that's part of J. Kenji Lopez Alt's resource as well. I've never actually done true canning. I've done like quick pickling with onions. This is the first time I'm actually making jam. But Amy, you've done like the true deal, right?
Yeah, so oftentimes for jams like these, because they're smaller batch, some of the times if it makes a particularly small amount, I'll just put it in a clean sterilized jar and straight into the fridge. I don't even bother trying to can it because like that's what I'm going to eat on toast and pancakes next. But one quick, not foolproof method to can them, but from this artisanal preserves book is putting the hot preserves in the hot sterilized jar up to recipes will often say how high up in the jar to put the mixture. So in this case, it was about within a 1/4 inch of the top of the jar. Put one of those sterilized, like fresh lids. The lids, buying them on their own right now, that's the hard part. A lot of stores are sold out of those because so many people are canning at home. But one of those lids and then the sealing ring. And then what you can do for a like quick seal process, and this is the part that's not foolproof, is immediately turn it upside down. So you can kind of see like that's the little bit of room that was left in there. And then because of the heat in the jar and of the jar itself, as it cools, it creates a vacuum and it can pop. So like right now, there's no pop there. So this jar actually sealed. And that's the indicator that like, cool, it's shelf stable now. I could keep this stored out. I could mail it to someone for Christmas. My grandma's gonna get one of these. It doesn't always seal. So if after like an hour, point at which it's pretty much come to room temperature, if you press the top and it still makes that popping sound, you have to store it in the fridge. And these jams are generally going to be good if you eat them within a month of putting them in the fridge. And the same thing kind of goes once you open one of those that has sealed, you can store it in the fridge and just make sure you eat it within the month. Amy, do you remember when we took that class, what Madeline talked about, if you see mold on the top of your jam?
No, I was really occupied by the samples she was giving us. That was my favorite part.
Yeah, it was pretty great. So what she mentioned is that, a lot of people for things like bread, cheese, if you see mold, you can cut it off and then eat the rest. That is not the case with jam. Because it's a liquid or like a liquid base, those mold spores, even if you can't see them, can penetrate all throughout the mixture. So unfortunately, if you see that you have jam with mold on it, you got to get rid of it. So yeah.
Word.
Amy, I see some great steam coming up there.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to put some sugar in. So you said a half a cup at a time?
Half a cup of sugar in and give it a stir. And then once the mixture gets back up to a boil, add another half cup, return to a boil, other half cup. And then the last boiling section will be up to 20 minutes for this recipe, or until you've reached the consistency you want, or if you're using a thermometer, whether it's a candy thermometer or a like digital read thermometer, make sure it's a food safe one. Don't use the one that you use to check your own temperature. You would get it up to 214 degrees. So I am the like after example today. So I actually made my jam earlier this morning, and I used a candy thermometer, which I just kind of stuck in there to monitor the temperature. And once it hit 214, I turned it off. You can also do something called the cold plate test. So let's do this real quick. So I put a plate in the fridge earlier this morning, so I'm gonna grab it. All right, so the way that a cold plate test will work, I've actually not done this with jam that's kind of come back to room temperature, although mine's still a little bit warm. Because, you know, while it's still very hot, it's not going to be fully at its full gel, just because it's still, like, I guess you could say kind of melted. But so what you would do is put some of your jam on a plate, and if you drag a spoon through it and it allows you to keep that line, then you've achieved a good gel consistency. The level of gel is largely like a matter of preference. If you want something that is going to be a full-on jelly that completely holds its shape, you would get it to a higher temperature or add more pectin. Like I said earlier, I kind of like preserves. So that's, and we talk on our resource sheet about the different ways to test for a gel. So the cold plate method, a spoon method where it's not going to work with mine right now because it's come down to temperature. But where you take a spoon in it, and if it falls in sheets as opposed to like a trickle like from a faucet, then it's going to have achieved a gel or the temperature, which is obviously going to be the most precise. Yeah, how's it look, Amy?
It's looking good. So I have put in the rest of my sugar. I'm gonna just tilt it. Ooh, JK, I'm gonna spill it all over.
Right.
Anyway, it's starting to gel a little, or not gel, but it's definitely breaking down. You can see it right here.
It's a lovely color. That's I'm worried that I'm going to do that over my laptop and then have to tell our IT department.
It's fine. This reminds me when I decided to make beet burgers and I was still living with my mom and I didn't know that beets stained. Yeah, your mom is making a face. It wasn't a great day, but anyway, this is looking, you can see that like the cranberries are pretty broken down. They're splitting apart. The skins are coming off. The sugar is melting a little bit too. Not totally, I guess I should take this out. So how long do I let it cook now?
So no more than 20 minutes, but essentially until it gets to the consistency you want. So now I know your cutting board is not cold, but can you drag your spatula through the stuff that you dropped? This is a good example. Okay, so it's a little bit runny still. It's kind of hard to see from here. So it's not gelled yet. Another reason like to start with something like cranberries, because it has such a high pectin level, is that it gels pretty easily. Whereas if you started with something in like the late summer, like plums or apricots, it's probably going to be a little bit runnier.
It does taste good though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
the sweetness is good.
It's a good one.
I'm just gonna eat this.
Sounds good. You know,
yeah.
I'm
sorry, and I can taste the spices already.
Yeah, it's good. I riffed on a lot of the recipes in here. I joke that I make like all types of jam as long as they're plum, because I like to get plums in particular at the farmer's market. And so I'm super familiar with the plum recipe, and it doesn't really have a like, you know, continue to cook, but no longer than this number of minutes. But the cranberry does. And that again is going to be because cranberries naturally have a higher level of pectin. And so if you overcook it, you're going to get like a jello mold, which I know some folks who aren't in attendance maybe really enjoy. Yeah. Ooh, I love the idea to grate in some orange zest or mix in with other spices for an achar. Yeah, that's a great tip, Mimosa. So yeah,
does anyone else have tips?
The stuff that she spilled. What tips do you have? Questions? You can go ahead and put them in the chat or come off of mute if you are comfortable doing so. Give that another stir, Amy.
All right.
Amy, can you taste the spice infusion in it?
I can. Yeah.
And it tastes good, huh?
It does. So I mostly taste the cinnamon and a little bit of the cloves, which makes sense, I think, right?
Yeah, for how much is in there. So, you know, we'll kind of wrap up a little bit. I have the after picture. So what you would do once you've hit the temperature, the consistency that you want, You've got, this is only a third of my recipe because like I said, I already jarred 2 of the jars to be able to show you that. So after it sits off of the heat for 5 minutes, you would take out the bouquet garni. I like to use tongs just because I've dropped this on the floor before and it is very messy. And then, yeah, you can do the any sort of canning process that you would want to do. So like a formal canning process, or like the most official one, would be not doing that like quick seal where I did it by inverting the jar, but still filling the jar to the specified height, putting the seal topper and the ring to fix it on. And then we have resources that give you the details on all of this. You can hot water seal them. So having a big pot, something that is tall enough so that you can submerge the jars in the pot covered completely by water by at least 1 inch. Again, the recipes will tell you the exact specifications and boil them for the amount of time laid out in the recipe. And even then, it's not 100% foolproof that the jars will seal. So I tend to stick with the inverted one. And then if nothing seals, friends and family get jam that they need to eat in the next month. So when it comes to putting things in the jars, I have like just a canning set. And so I did earlier disinfect my jars. I boiled them for about 10 minutes with all the rest of the supplies. So this is the one that I didn't use yet. And the smaller the mouth of your jar, the messier potentially the process can be of canning them. So you can use a funnel, you can use a spoon. I have a canning funnel. You can see it's still got the jam on it from a bit earlier. This is the one I'm just going to put in the fridge and eat as soon as I have another loaf of bread. So let me see if we can adjust this tiny bit. I always have tea. Sorry, I didn't think about that angle. And then just kind of pour it in. And you can kind of see how viscous this is looking. That's because it's gelled quite well. So it's still pretty lumpy. Which I like. If this is something you don't like, you could put the, like try and push it through a mesh sieve or a strainer. You would lose a lot of the pieces, obviously, so it's not going to make as much jam. But, ooh, that was almost not the right size jar. We're home cooked, so. Yeah, I forgot what I was saying, but yeah, if you put it through a strainer, you're probably going to get a firmer gel too, because all that you're leaving is the stuff that has the pectin connecting to one another as opposed to some of the pieces. So if I were going to can this, the jam would have to be hot, the jar would have to be hot. I would obviously not be able to hold it like this. I would need to make sure that it is not going over the top of the jar, and make sure that I've cleaned the edge so that the lid is able to adhere. And again, a recipe will give you all the instructions for that. So it is a little messy, very tasty.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to bring my camera so you can see it. Oops. I'm getting a lot of foam.
Okay.
And some recipes call for you to skim the foam.
Yes. So
what's that about?
So that could be about, did I forget to tell you to wash the cranberries, and did you rinse the cranberries?
I did rinse the cranberries.
Okay.
And
So,
I looked for like bruised ones and stuff. Yep.
Perfect. So what it could be, like that could be a result of how quickly the sugar was added and was coming together. That in a sort of jam, especially if you've cleaned the fruit, which you should. Sorry, I forgot to say that at the beginning. It's on the recipes. It really shouldn't be like impurities in the foam. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure. We'd have to Google that. Interesting question. I don't think it would be an issue unless it looks like particularly like not good. So yeah.
Nope, it looks fine. I just remember in the one plum recipe I was reading, this person, and this is the one we have in the resource guide, specifically said to spoon off the foam, but I think that might be like a preference.
Yeah, and Mary, full disclosure, my mom, in the comments in the chat said, it doesn't hurt the jam, it just doesn't look as nice. And she took a canning class at the county extension a couple of years ago and like has the canning Bible about this. So yeah, and I see Anne and Jasmine both saying that, you know, this is something they really enjoyed and look forward to making. So I'm gonna stop talking for a second so I can grab the recipe from our website and link that to you all real quick. Amy, anything else you wanted to share a bit?
No, so this was the first time that I made jam, and obviously I made a mess, but it was pretty straightforward, and I'm probably gonna do that I'll try the quick seal method. I think I have another jar somewhere, but most likely mine are gonna be shared and eaten within a month. More so because I'm scared and I don't totally trust myself. But yeah, this was really straightforward, and I will probably do this again, which says something.
Yeah, it's awesome. And like, this is the same basic method for any sort of fruit. And so mine, the full recipe of 16 ounces made 3 cups pretty evenly. And Amy's was probably going to make about 2 cups based on the cutting board incident. But yeah, if you have any other sort of fruit, it's going to be that same process, getting things cut up small, at least the size of cranberries or smaller, a little bit of water, bring it to a boil. If you want to infuse some spices or zest or orange peel or something, bouquet garni is super easy because it's easy to take it out. And then when you're ready to add your sugar, do it in small batches at a time, bring it to a boil till you're at the consistency like. It's great to experiment. And one of the other reasons we picked jam for this month is because in October, we did simple grilled cheese. In November, Martha and Erica did gourmet grilled cheese, and adding spiced cranberry jam to a grilled cheese would be excellent. So it's all cumulative. We'll make sure you have a full menu by the end of it. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, things we're missing? Lina, our intrepid program assistant who makes sure everything runs sweet. All right. So yeah, you've seen what it looks like at the end from my kitchen. Amy looks slightly terrified, but I assure her it will be fine. She just has a couple more minutes letting hers boil and then coming down to temperature. So it'll be ready. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. If you make the recipe and you have a cool picture either of it jarred or how you're serving it, maybe on like a social distanced, just within your household cheese plate, something like that. There is a note on the handout about where you can share a picture with the library, and we might share it on our social media. So we love to see what you all make. Thank you for joining us. Remember, your kitchen is your perfect place to experiment.
Thank you, everyone.